one of the questions I tell kids when they ask me is, why do you love football so much? I go, it's because it's done so much in my life. I mean, I went to college, and because of it, I have my job because of it. I met my wife because of it. I have my kids because of it. So, I mean, that's why I love the sport so much and so thankful for it.
All right, it is episode 58 of Yellow Colored Glasses, and we've got an awesome guest on this week, and it is Coach Hamilton, our high school football coach here at Pleasant Hill, and we're excited to have him on. This is one that I've actually been wanting to do for quite a while. Just haven't really asked you, and then you haven't had time with everything that's going on and everything you got going on. So anyway, super stoked to have him on. Real quick, whenever we start these, we always like to go through and say like a peak and a pit, okay? And a peak is like what's going on, like what's going good. Pit obviously is what's going a little bit poor, and so sometimes I don't have a great pit, but I'm pretty sure you have a good peak from what's going on. So anyway, tell us what's going on with you, that the peak and the pit piece.
I mean, we're obviously started the season 3-0, but I mean that's some carryover too from what's been going on here. I think the last 3 or 4 years, in terms of our kids buying into what we're trying to do, off-season wise, schematically, everything. And we got great numbers in grades 9 through 12, 7 through 12. I mean, we have 140 kids in 7 through 12 football playing for the school right now. And our kids are doing a really, really good job of working hard and doing exactly what we ask of them, and we demand a lot of them. I believe you have to demand a lot to have success, and those kids are learning those things along the way too, in terms of, hey, it's hard, and life's hard. And, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot going well right now. We feel really good about where we're at with our kids.
So we're week 3. We just finished week 3. You had a big one on Friday night. Tell us a little bit about that one. What happened Friday night?
When I got here, I didn't realize how big of a rivalry that was, and I didn't realize how lopsided it was for a long period of time. And our kids being able to go out and get the 3rd one in a row last Friday was a big deal to our kids. And you've probably seen some of the pictures of the coaches with NWO shirts on.
I did.
That was our theme of the week with the kids. Was in order to truly change this thing and create a new world order, we had to beat them a 3rd time. And, talk about our kids buying into something, man. They ate that up all week long. And, we went out, and it's one of those games to where both teams are going to make mistakes, but it's a rivalry. And, in the end, I thought it was the team that made the less mistakes that won. But it was physical. We're a little dinged up and got to heal up a little bit this week. And we're going to do some things to help with that a little bit. But it's a really fun football game. Our defense is tough, and offensively we replaced 10 starters from last year, and they're coming along. I mean, we've made some mistakes. We put the ball on the ground 10 times in 3 games, but we've also scored 60 points week 2, 46 week 1, and another 28 this week. So they're coming along, and as soon as we clean up all those other mistakes, I think we're going to be pretty scary.
For sure. No, it's been awesome to watch, and I want to kind of go back in time a little bit here. So you're in year 4. This is your 4th season, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So where did you get your start? Like where was your start in coaching? Take us a little bit of the history before you got here to Pleasant Hill.
Okay. Football's been a big part of my life. I'm thankful for a lot of things football's given me. I went to Odessa High School, and we had some success there when I was in high school, and it was a lot of fun. And I went on to play college football at Central Methodist. And one of the questions I tell kids when they ask me is, why do you love football so much? I go, it's because it's done so much in my life. I mean, I went to college, and because of it, I have my job because of it. I met my wife because of it. I have my kids because of it. So, I mean, that's why I love the sport so much and so thankful for it. But out of college, I got hired at Belton in 2007. That was my first year coaching. Coached running backs that year. That was new to me, being a lineman my whole life, but it forced me to get outside my comfort zone and learn as a coach. And we happened to go to the state championship that year, and our head football coach looked at me and goes, this doesn't happen every year. But I was there for 13 years. I spent time as a running backs coach, the O-line coach. I coached D-line. I coached linebackers. Finished my last 3 years as defensive coordinator there before I got hired here. I'm a pretty loyal guy. I don't like jumping a lot of schools. I like being where I'm at. So I was there 13 years. Worked for Todd Vaughn my last 6, and very good mentor to me in terms of being a head football coach, and did a lot for me to help me progress my career. But ultimately, he knew I wanted to be a head football coach, but not at a school the size of Belton, something the size of Pleasant Hill and Odessa, and that's where I wanted to end at as a head coach, is a school that size, because I grew up in a school that size and saw what football does for the whole town, and I want my own kids to experience that. So I always kept my eye open for this job. I always thought it was a good one, and it kind of opened up at the right time, and it was the right time for us to try to make that choice and that decision, and it just worked out from there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I want to kind of piggyback off of what you just said on the schools this size and what it does for the town. And I didn't play football in high school. I was just basketball. And I remember, the guys that were above me. I remember the kids in my class. We had some good teams. And football, my whole life in Pleasant Hill, has always been important. But with that being said, it feels totally different now. Right, and even from the ground up, it just, something seems different, and I think that's a lot to do with you and kind of what's happening with the youth programs, the things that you're doing at all levels. So, we talk about the culture word gets thrown around all the time. Everybody talks about culture. Okay, so take us through what kind of your philosophy and building a program, because clearly, I don't feel like the success that you guys had last year, obviously the semifinal, appearance, I don't feel like that there's any kind of drop-off coming. It doesn't look like it from everything that I'm seeing through the Little League and the kids that are coming through. So talk about kind of your philosophy on building your program and what you're doing to kind of feed that pipeline.
Program-wide, it's about doing what's best for kids. And I don't care what the decision's around. And, I tell my coaches all the time, I said, we're never going to do what's best for us. We're going to do what's best for kids. And we got great numbers out. And I think you have to be able to do that in order to have some success. And I think the impact football has on those kids' lives, there's kids who need football more than football needs them sometimes. And being able to get those kids out and change their lives. But once again, one of my biggest pieces is we don't ever give up on a kid. And the reason I say that, their body changes there may be a kid who's a backup or third string offensive lineman as a 7th grader, and his body changes by his junior or senior year, and he's where he wants to be. And it started in the weight room for us. I got hired during COVID, so that was kind of tricky. We did a lot of stuff outside, but that toughness, the camaraderie, those kids going through all that stuff at the same time together is kind of where this started, I feel like. And year 2, we went 2-8 that first year, and I felt like we made progress. I tell our kids all the time, I said, I don't think we're where we're at without that 2-8 season that first year, because we were playing our best football at the end of the year, even then, and that's our ultimate goal. But had a great offseason the year after that, headed into year 2, and I'll never forget that season. We were 7-6, won a district title, but the way we won football games, won them late, outlasted teams. And after we beat Boonville week 1 that year, we were down 28-8, beat them 43-35. Our kids right then, it clicked that, hey, yeah, off-season, what we do in terms of our off-season program matters. And it's not hard to motivate our kids to be there because of that season. And, you see it on Friday nights, we wear people down. And our kids are in great shape, and we're Class 3, Class 4 school this year who play kids on one side of the football, which is unseen too. But our lower levels are starting to implement that. We've had coaches clinics with our youth coaches. Our 6th grade team, I went out and watched them play yesterday. They're running our stuff. 2nd and 3rd graders are going to be tough to ask to run that type of stuff, but they're calling plays the way we call plays. Their plays are different because those kids aren't ready to run what we run, but the way they send in the play call, all those things. And that coaches clinic's only going to continue to grow. We've done that for 2 years now. And I was talking to the Parks and Rec with flag football. Our goal is to get those coaches involved in it next year as well, and get all facets of that program. And now it's feeding into the middle school to where we got 65 7th and 8th graders out in middle school football this year. And it's not going to shrink because our current 6th grade team, I think, has 41 or 42 kids on it. And, there's 30 plus 7th graders, so that's going to put us at 70 if all those kids stay out next year. And, like I said, one thing we have to preach to our kids, because if you're not where you're at right now, just keep trusting the process and you'll be where you want to be by the time your sophomore, junior, senior year rolls around. And we try to build character. If people seen our kids rolling around town with their white T-shirts on, we got 4 things we believe in, and that's accountability, communication, toughness, and trust, and that's written all over our shirts. We define each one of those things with our kids and want them to understand that those things are make you successful in life, not just football. And that's when they get out of here. Winning games is great, but hopefully by the time it's all said and done, they're out of here. They're better men and they're better prepared for what's going to hit them in life later on down the road. And we preach those things all summer long. We define them. We talk about them, and they hear them every day. They're on everything we wear. And I tell our kids, I said, those are the things when things aren't going right that you got to fall back on. Even on Friday nights, at home, if you're going through something, those are things they have to fall back on.
Man, that's awesome stuff. No, and something that you said quite a while back that I think is really, it's really cool. And it resonates with me because of Macklin. When you said, you never give up on a kid and their bodies change constantly. I got, my 2 little guys, and their size difference is very, there's a big discrepancy. And so I'm already looking at the future of like, okay, Macklin loves everything. He loves to play everything, but he's going to be little for a while, right? And so when you're talking about how kids change and their bodies change and the development piece of everything, I think that is so important. And you can, I know that there's guys in the program that whenever I was still there that were freshmen that were tiny kids that had in middle school too, that I never would have thought that they would have had the role and the impact that they had their senior year. Maybe they didn't touch the field, and then all of a sudden their senior year they had a big role. So how do you keep those kids positive and sticking with it? Because obviously everything you're saying about the development and the trust and the culture and all that stuff is huge, but how do you keep them bought in whenever you have the numbers that you have, whenever you have so much talent kind of through it? How do you keep those guys and say, hey, you know what, keep going at it your senior year, you might have a shot to do something? You gotta
make sure the kids see it, and talk about it. And you gotta have examples of it. We had one this week. We do a rotational captain every week, and one of our rotational captains is a freshman. He's a senior this year. Was small, and worked and worked and worked and worked, and he's having a great senior year, and it's been really fun to watch. But in the weight room, pound for pound, he's probably one of our strongest kids because of how small he is. But you got to identify. I give an award at our banquet at the end of the year to identify the kids who didn't play varsity as a freshman through junior and stuck it out and played their senior year. Last year I think we had 6 to 7 kids that were never a varsity starter and started as a senior. This year we're going to be very similar to that in some spots, probably 5, 6, 7 kids. And, I talk about those kids all the time with our underclassmen. Hey, they're your example, guys. It may take some time to get there, but you will get there. Look at what this kid's done. Played JV as a junior, turned around senior year last year. If it was one of the kids last year, made the state semifinals because of it. And I always tell our kids, if we're having to start freshmen and sophomores, we're not in a very good place in terms of programming. 1, 2, 3, the occasional here and there. But if things are being done the right way and that developmental process is going on, it's different. An 18-year-old kid going against a 14-year-old freshman.
Absolutely.
And those kids sometimes aren't physically ready as freshmen. Some of them great athletes, but physically don't know if they can handle it yet or not. There's like I said, the occasional special one, but you got to have a process in mind and reward your kids for their hard work. And use the examples throughout the season of kids who've stuck through the process. Everybody talks about trust the process, and a lot of people just say that and throw that out there. But, our kids have to see it, to trust it. And I think the last 2 years they've had a lot of really good examples to see that and trust it and go from there. They always say for every sophomore you start, you can count that as one loss. Is kind of the thing that goes on between coaches. And I think about my first year here, we started 6 to 7 to 8 of them. We had 8 losses, But as they get stronger and bigger and, learn the game and get tougher and those things, our kids see that, and I think they believe it. And, that's when I identified this kid as our rotational captain last week. I told our kids, if you need an example, this is a kid that you need to use as an example. Our quarterback this year is the same way. He's going to be a 1-year starter for us, sat behind a really good quarterback the last 2 years, did it the right way. And when you have success, it obviously makes those things easier too. When the kids see that, they want to be a part of something. But
yeah, no doubt. And so with that being said too, I think something that's really also very, very important, and I didn't realize this whenever I was younger. I didn't fully understand it until I got out of education and started a business. Mm-hmm. Running a business and building a team of people and hiring people and the day-to-day and all that stuff is so similar to running a program.
No doubt.
It is. You can take pieces of it. It all it matches up perfectly. And one of the things I think that a lot of people struggle with, and I know I was horrible at this when I very first got into coaching and got my first head coaching job, was delegating and giving up control. And I know all the kids love playing for you, but with that being said, all the coaches that you have love coaching on your staff, and they enjoy they think you do an amazing job. So talk us through how you delegate and what the role that you put on your coaches to make your life easier, right? To make you less stressed, because it takes everybody. So kind of what's your process with how you handle your coaches, or not your coaches, but as your in your guys' program, what do you guys do?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I wanted to make sure I said I got a great staff. They're committed, they're loyal, and they work really, really, really hard, and they care about kids, and that's the most important thing to me is do they care about kids? Year one coming in here, I inherited some, but I knew a lot of the staff too already.
Sure.
Coaches, clinics, networking, those types of things. And one thing, and this is where my previous mentor, Todd Von Belton, comes into play, was I kind of got to watch him do that and learn from him. And you got to let your coaches coach. If you try to do it all by yourself, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. Now, with those guys, it's also your job to teach them. Mm-hmm. Here's how I want it done. Here's what we want to do. And, you got to be able to put in the time on the front end with those guys. And it's no different than, we talk about developing kids.
Yep.
And I have some pretty experienced coaches, and, there's 4 of us that have been through this thing since I've been here. And, we've kind of filled some other spots here and there. And there's 4 of us who, we just know the way each other thinks already. And then, when we get some new guys in, you got to develop them. I got a new young coach this year, and he's doing a really good job. He's high energy. But it's my job to make sure he's prepared to do what I ask him to do. I think it's also my job, if our coaches have goals to be a head coach or a coordinator or something, to help them get there. And, that goes back to, like I said, I think we trust each other. But we sit down and meet in the off season. People don't see the hours that go into it when it's not football season either. Mm-hmm. We put a ton of hours in during football season, but when it's not football season, we go through. I have a very detailed sheet those coaches get. Here are your responsibilities. I'm not going to say anything to you unless it doesn't get done, and that's the only time all those things get done. But it's a developmental process with them. It's us getting used to working with each other. And I think as a leader of a business or a head football coach, like you said, very similar things, you got to have expectations. And I got guys on my staff who've heard the same expectations for 4 years, but the way we start every season is we sit down and we go through those expectations. How we treat kids, how we talk to parents, relationships with each other as coaches, how we act during practice, how practice needs to be ran, and be professional about it. And through that's also the evaluation process. I would like, most of my closest friends are football coaches, and they're guys I have on staff. But we sit down at school at the end of every season and go through an evaluation process and talk about, hey, here's where I feel like you need to improve. Here's things I'd like to see different. And I've never had an evaluation that I've had to give to where I'm like, okay, we got to make a change. But more or less gives us a chance to talk professionally and, hey, here's what I would like to see different, in a one-on-one setting. And I also give them the opportunity to have a form they fill out to evaluate me and the program, because I want their thoughts as well. So that's kind of how we work as a staff. I have an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I ran the defense my first year, and then realized there were some guys I could trust to do that. And what that allows me to do is focus on our culture. Focus on the things that I think matter. Whereas if you're trying to run one side of the ball, you can still do that, but it's a little more difficult to do. I can see all facets of the program versus if I was just running the defense, that's where my focus is. And our offensive coordinator is doing his thing while I'm doing mine. But having guys I can trust allows me to develop the culture a little bit, maintain where we're at there.
Yeah, no, and I think the main thing I see from everything that you're saying is the consistency. Like, I know, like, none of the things that you're saying are you're just throwing them out there and they're just things that are spoken. Like, everything that you're talking about are the things that you see day in and day out. And I know Coach Thompson, he's the OC, and my year that right before you came on was my last year, and I remember how practices were ran, and the efficiency and the flow. Is it pretty similar still to kind of how everything is always scripted out, right? You've got your practice plan, and you guys stick to that. Talk about how the consistency that you guys have within your program, not just with the way you coach your coaches and the kids, but how important is that to the level of success that you guys are having? Because I feel like the consistency is the hardest thing to maintain sometimes in everything that we do.
It is. And
I feel like you guys are doing a really good job with that. Like, walk me through that process.
I think it goes back to what standards you hold kids to. And, with high school kids, I think you have to be consistent. That's what I tell our coaches. Our kids need to know what to expect from us every day as coaches. Attitude, how we talk to them, how we coach them, and be consistent with it. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. Like I tell kids, I said, we're going to push you, we're going to be hard on you, but the kids need to know to expect that, and it's not just random. The consistency with how we practice, and you brought that up. I don't know how practices went before I got here, but with 80 kids and 8 coaches, we're able to. I think this is a big development piece that I should have talked about earlier, is we split our kids up into 2 groups. We have kind of what we consider our varsity group, and then we have our freshman group, and some of our JV kids, and some of those JV kids kind of overlap between groups. Ideally, I'd like for it to just be juniors, seniors, freshmen, sophomores. And last year, that's the way it was we had so many seniors. This year, we have a few sophomores up in that varsity group. But our young kids get the same amount of reps as our older kids do. A lot of schools we play, those young kids are standing around or they're playing scout team. While our varsity kids are practicing offense, our young kids are practicing defense, and they're running our stuff. They're not running some other school's stuff. And we've done that now for 3 years, and I think that's a big part of the developmental piece too, is they're running our stuff for an entire year. And then by the time they're in that bar, they know, and we're just going. But that's the consistency piece. You talk about our kids know what practice is going to be like. We practice fast. We fly around. And we spend no more than 10 minutes in a session. We go 10 minutes of this, and then we're moving on to the next thing, because you got to keep it moving. Because if you go 20, 30 minutes, they're going to stand there. It's going to start to lull. We're constantly moving our kids around. And, when they're done with practice, they're tired, but they've gotten done what they need to get done. I don't know if that quite answers your question.
No, it does.
But
I think that's just so important. And there's been so many things just from that 1 year that I was able to coach varsity football. Like, I had coached middle school. I know football a little bit, but I'm not nearly the level that all you guys are. But it related so much to basketball too. That I think sometimes that I didn't realize was just that the way that practices can be planned and organized, and Coach Van Dyne one of his things that he always talked about was, he would stick to his schedule no matter what, and because if you got to spend more time on it than you got planned, you're probably not going to get much better at that day anyway. Make more time for it tomorrow, right? But one of the other things that you said, this is going back to playing just on one side of the ball. That's something, like you said, that's not really normal at this size of school, or it hasn't been. And I think that was, I noticed that last year. Like, you only had a couple guys that you play both ways, and it's only when you really kind of need it, or you need that. So similar this year, right? Yeah. How big of an advantage is that with what you guys are doing? Because you mentioned wearing people down. I've noticed that too. Yeah. It's close. Boom, all of a sudden, dang, the other team's gassed. They're done. Yeah. What's the philosophy there? I mean, do you feel like that's just...
our kids believe in it. They love it. And that's one of the things, talk about making it fun for kids. That's part of this, is how do we make it fun for kids. But our tempo on offense is, as soon as the ball's set, we're going. And defenses had a hard time getting lined up. Coaches struggle to get calls in defensively. You're going to slow blitzes down. You're going to slow down substitutions on defense, and they're going to have to keep the same kids out there. And the schools we play, if we take what we have with, and I'm a big believer in, for example, we had a couple receivers last year who could have probably started a corner for us. But is that kid completely exhausted from playing offense as good as a kid who may not be quite the athlete they were, but they're fresh, to be able to play defense? I think a lot of times that kid being fresh outweighs putting the better athlete out there who's gassed, because when you get gassed, it affects you not just physically but mentally as well, where if you're fresh, you're on point mentally and you can get lined up and know what your job is and execute it. And, so that's kind of the philosophy we've led with, and with our offense being tempo the way it is, our kids do get tired, but then while our defense is on the field, they're getting a break because they're not playing defense, and we go back out there and we do the same thing. And here in a couple of weeks, we're going to play a school that has 7 or 8 guys who play both ways. And the way we do things is won us football games. Just that alone, I think, especially a couple of years ago when we were able to do it. And like I said, we've had 2 to 3 kids that have gone on the other side of the ball at times the last couple of years. This year, we really only got 1 who's doing that right now. But it also you have to have your philosophies aligned. Defensively, our philosophy the last couple of years has been, hey, bend it but don't break. Make the offense drive the field. A high school offense is typically going to make a mistake if they have to run 14, 15 plays to score a touchdown. So it's always run another play. Make them run another play. They bust off a 30-yard run, pursue to it, make the tackle, because you don't know what's going to happen on the next play. Are they going to fumble? Are they going to snap the ball over the quarterback's head? Are they going to throw an interception? And that aligns with what we do offensively. We're going to go, and hopefully score. Now, hey, make them drive the field and make a mistake. Versus, like we played Harrisonville last Friday. I think their philosophy is aligned. Their defense is going to be aggressive. They're going to blitz, and they're going to hope that, hey, we're going to make a big play on defense. If we don't and you score, that's all right. Our offense is going to get the ball back, and we're going to take 7-8 minutes off the clock. Those philosophies align. But you got to make sure, I think, your offense, defense philosophies mesh together and play off of each other a little bit versus just that side of the ball. And our kids learn more faster. They all practice both sides of the ball. We don't have the depth to be able to just say, hey, this is all you're practicing every day. They have to practice both sides of the ball, but when Friday nights roll around, we're going to play as many kids one way as we can that we feel like can handle it.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I think that goes with what we were talking about earlier when I asked about those kids that develop later. That gives them the ability to be on the field.
Absolutely.
And there's 2 games that I remember from that 7 and 6 year that jump out to me. And the first one, I think, was Boonville, the one when you guys came back. Were you guys playing people both sides of the ball that night and wearing them down? Because I feel like you guys kind of wore them down in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah, we did. We were playing one way.
That was one. And then that Harrisonville game that year was crazy. That was that third place, right? Yep. And we were up, by a 1 or 2 scores. Have a big interception, I think, right before halftime. they come out, they go up like 42-28 in the fourth,
Yep.
and then you guys come back and end up beating them 49-42.
Yep.
Like, that was another example, I felt like, of just sticking with it, and, you know, that kind of stuff paid off. And I know there were a lot of games that year where, like you said, were so close and winning games at the end and just battles, which then when you got the districts, it paid off.
Teachable moments, man. I mean, that's what everybody looks at. We went for 2 against Excelsior Springs that year and didn't get it and lost. But the fact that we went for it helped us when districts rolled around, because we went for 2 against Odessa and got it and won.
Yeah.
You know, late in the game. All those teachable moments throughout the year, you know, carry over.
No, that's awesome. So let me ask you this. This will be the last thing. We'll finish it up. But, like, has there been any negatives to the one side of the ball thing? Like, is our kids that are like, man, Coach, do they just fully buy in, or are there kids that are like, man, I really wish I was playing this position on offense and defense? Do you struggle with that at all, or is it pretty smooth?
I think, you know, the first year or two, for them to get used to it, I think there were some kids, and rightfully so. I mean, I was in high school. I played both ways, and I wanted to. I didn't want to come off the field. And, you know, there's kids who mention it and things, but I think they are pretty much fully bought into what we're doing now. You know, like I said, all it takes is 1 or 2 injuries sometimes, and then we are to a kid playing both ways sometimes. But no, I think that's just the natural of a high school kid. You know, no complaints about it from them. I mean, no issues, I think. But they understand kind of where they're at and where they fit into what we do. I mean, we had a couple receivers out sick this week in practice, so one of our starting corners filled in a receiver. He's good. I mean, if we have to play him, he'll be fine. But our goal is to keep those kids as fresh as we can, because we feel like we're going to outlast you most of the time.
Yeah. No, and I remember, too, like, I think it might have been last year, really maybe the last couple of years, but you guys had a running back that ran the ball a lot.
Yep.
And I think most people's thoughts were, you know, this kid's getting the ball a lot, right? But this whole playing on one side, that gave you the ability to let him do his job, let him pound the ball on offense. He's getting a ton of rest on the defensive end.
Yep.
You still got your other guy that you still have now that was coming in to spell him when needed.
Yep.
I don't know, it's just awesome. I love it. Obviously, the community's excited. The camp, you know, the way that you guys run your youth camp in the summer, all the things that are going on, the buy-in. Like I said, football's always been important in Pleasant Hill, but it just has a different feel now. Like I don't know if you may not realize that, but everything's going awesome. You're doing a great job. So
I appreciate it.
What do you feel like the rest of the year, the rest of the season? I mean, what you guys are off to the 3-0 start.
Yeah.
Was that expected? Was that kind of like maybe?
You know, it was kind of wait and see. You know, because we did have a lot to replace
for sure
from last year, and I thought we were going to be fine. It was, hey, let's just kind of see where we're at heading into the year, and you know, rely on our defense early, and our offense will come around. And you know, there's still mistakes being made, but I mean, I'll be honest. I thought the Harrisonville win was a big win for us.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't quite sure how that night was going to go. You know, even during the off season when I talked to, you know, guys who run websites and high school sports reporters, you know, they always kind of ask us, who do you see competing for a conference title? And, you know, I never talk about us in that conversation. But I think Harrisonville is going to be putting up a fight for that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and I still think they got the opportunity to do that. You know, they've had a tough first 3-week schedule. But in terms of working towards a conference title, that was a big win for us. Oak Grove's better this year. They're 3-0. Odessa's 3-0, and they both play each other this week. We play Odessa in 2 weeks, so the conference is a grind for us because everybody plays so physical.
How's Center? Are they good this year?
You know, they lost quite a bit to graduation last year. They had a lot of seniors. I think right now they are 1-2. They beat St. Joe Lafayette week 1, and have lost to Lincoln Prep, and they lost to Oak Grove this week. Okay. So, yeah, they graduated a lot. I mean, I think, and then the one kid who was supposed to return transferred to another school. But our conference, like I said, it's a grind, and you got to be ready to go every week. And you know, you hear the guys in the NFL when they played 16 games, they look at it every 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. Well, during the regular season, that's kind of where we're at. We evaluate every 3 weeks and kind of see, hey, here's where we're at. What changes do we need to make moving forward? And you know, we're in conference play here on out till week 9, and some of those changes have started to be made already. We talked about them after the game got over on Friday, but it's gonna. I mean, it truly is 1-0, 1 week at a time here.
Absolutely.
One thing we haven't done the last 2 years is win a conference title, and we'd really like to be able to do that. That's a goal our kids have this year. So
And you guys bumped up a class too, so your district is, you got Jeff City in there, right?
Yep.
Jeff City and Warrensburg,
Van Horn, Osage, Marshall.
It's a little bit different look for Pleasant Hill than we haven't seen that before. So
yeah,
but no, it should be exciting. Anyway, Coach, thanks for coming on. I'm glad we got to chat a little bit.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, we'll post this up and throw some clips. And thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
if you guys are watching it, thank you. Thanks for watching the podcast. It's 58 in a row, so still doing them. All right, everybody have a good one.